Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So for today's video, I'm just going to share with you my current build of my Rakdos Midrange deck, which I'm playing here in our local weekly standard tournaments. That's specifically Saturday standard. And recently we had several major events done in our local game store at the Reis place. And so I had also be able to make adjustments on this, but sharing with you today my recent deck build, of course, with the sideboards, which we're going to discuss in a bit. So starting off with the division here, as you can see, I've also pre-divided some of the spells. So here are the lands and of course the creatures. Might call this one as a mid-range, but it's simply more of adding much of a curve of a creature curve, starting off with, of course, with turn 2. So here are my 2-drops basically in the deck. We have a lot of 2-drops here, which includes, of course, the Deep Cavern Bats, Bloodline Harvester as the signature 2-drop for the Rakdos decks, and the inclusion of Inti, Shadow of the Sun, as the new card advantage, which also can curve out pretty well in this deck. So let's discuss a bit what are the functions of these cards. So aside, of course, from Aggro, we have Deep Cavern Bat as a playset in the deck to make sure that you can check off your opponent's hands, disrupt a bit of their cards. Let's say they can remove a spot removal, for example, or remove their next creature to play on their turn. And later on can also get you a good advantage with the lifelink effects, of course, in the damage race, which can also be beneficial to you. Bloodline Harvester, which only not going with the 3-2 for 2-drop, but also with the ability to produce the blood token, which can also be used for the spot removal and the card draw effect. So having more of this effect can get you to kill off any relevant creature that can be reached by the -X equal to twice the number of blood tokens. So that's playset of this card. Then of course Inti in the late game is very beneficial, not only of course in the mid game, but having this one's ability to get your attacking creatures +1/+1 and discarding those extra lands, for example, would get you to exile the top card with library, and then you may play that card until the next end step. Do take note that this ability, that this is not only during your turn, but also when you discard one or more cards, means that at any time your opponents made you discard a card, for example, this would also trigger Inti's ability. So we have 4 of these in the main deck. Now for the 3-drops, I have a few variants of these cards, specific for various purpose, of course, and which we have the following. We have first Geeks, Yagmoth Praetor, of course, for the card draw. Whenever a creature deals damage, combat damage specifically, it will get you pay 1 life and draw a card. So that's 2 copies in the deck. We have also 4 copies of Preacher of the Schism. So this is not probably the best 3-drop for any black-based mid-range deck in the metagame, in the standard, because its ability that not only become a 2 for that touch, but gets you a few card advantage with this ability that is also depending on the life total. And that we have, I've considered a copy of Graveyard Trespasser, since there are a few Graveyard Shenanigans in the metagame. We can use its ability to exile those necessary cards that they would able to record, for example. And also that this one can also protect itself. It also helps you with the damage race and much more if it would be able to flip into a Graveyard Glutton. So that's the 3-drop in the deck. For the 4-drops, of course, we have Shieldred, which can basically disrupt any card advantage, card draw effects from your opponent by punishing them for losing 2 life for each of the card draw. And 3 copies of Geological Appraiser, which can also get you to discover 3 and get into a Schism, for example, or a Geeks, or a spot removal, depending on the randomness of the reveal. But it is also necessary that it can get you some advantage in that. And last but not least, for the 5-drops, we have the Aklasot's Deepest Betrayal and Bonehold Dracosaur. That's a good way to provide in a way, card advantage, board advantage, but also resiliency in spot removals. So aside from exile effects, Aklasats can basically get you to have your opponent discard a card, and its ability that when it dies, that is, I mean, by the exile effect, if not exile kind of spot removal, the trigger of this dice will get you to have this one return to the battlefield as a Temple of the Dead, and then later on, if we go with the mid game, you can just have this one transform back by paying this ability, and of course the condition would be needed to satisfy. But the important thing is that it can be able for you to discard your opponent's card whenever it attacks, and then if they don't be able, if they have no cards, for example, they would have you draw a card. And the bonus is that if they would discard a land card, you will create a 1/1 black bat creature token. And also with the same thought with Bonehorde Dracosaur, it that's ability that the winner your upkeep, reveal the top 2 cards of the library, and then if it's those cards would be lands or non-land, then you have these kinds of trigger. So in any way, these both cards will give you card advantage. Also, you can play those cards as somewhat of your extra of your hand, and also generate a board advantage per se. Not to mention it is also a 5/5 flying first strike, which can deal a huge chunk if you would be able to untap with this creature. Now for the spot removals or the removal spells per se, I've considered, of course, several generics inclusion here. 2 Cut Down, 2 Bitter Triumph for the Planeswalker, of course, and 2 Go for the Throat. But the important thing is the 2 specific cards to the matchup. So first, Obsidian of the Veil, which can also not only act as a removal but also as a discard effect for any mid-range or control deck, since Azorius control is not popular in the metagame. Discarding their hand would really have them punished for not casting on for any heavy spells, for example. And then Hidutsu consumes all for the Boros tokens matchup. So I've needed this to add this one, at least one in the main deck, because at any instance that you can be able to reveal this to the Appraiser or have this one cast at turn 3, you can basically just swipe out their board, at the same time get you to counter graveyard shenanigans by having this second lore counter added effect. And of course, can become a 3/3 creature or another threat of your own with the Vessel of the All Consuming. Now for the lands, let's just take a quick look of the lands. We just have, of course, the basic mana fix, of course, with the Kinuma, sa channel lands. We have the Manland with Restless Vents, that's, I think it's 3 copies. Sulphur Springs, of course, Haunted Ridge, and that is somewhat the rest. And also Sokensan, the red channel land, and a Cavern of Souls to somewhat go through the counter wall of the most blue-black or Azorius control decks. So this in total is 25 lands, and your non-lands is 35. Now for your sideboard, let's check a look. That's what my sideboard would look like now. We have some versions here. I think this one is for the Breach the Multiverse. Let's check the card. Okay, so this one is the Golgari sideboard of this card. I have chosen again several one-ofs, and not to mention that I'm really a fan of the one-of cards. We have another copy of Aklasats for the mid-range and control decks. Breach Multiverse against the Domain, and maybe for the Reanimator decks, the Grixis control versions. We have a Braid for artifacts, Riverhood's End for additional sideboard against Boros and Mono Red. So Jures, 3 Jures for the control matchups. 1 Exact the Truth, maybe for Esper. Can also work with that of other mid-range decks, or maybe for the Mirror. Grixis Command also can act against the Mirror match or against Golgari, and Hitsugo against the Boros again. Liliana against Azorius and Dimir. Soul Guide Lantern, consider this because of the matchup with the lands that Temur control. So we need a way to exile your graveyard per se. I've also added to the end for the control matchups, because we need to exile basically the Wandering Emperor so that you won't really have a cut way to have a win condition and a spot removal at the same time. So that's 2 copies. And the Stone Brain can also be used for specific card to exiles, for example Atraxa. You can also use Duress to check the other hand and then name a card accordingly. So that's basically it for your SB. So just a quick rundown of this deck overall. They can be good as an aggro per se because of several 2-drops in this, but mid game up to the late game, I think this deck can still suffice to be that card advantage, especially in post sideboarded matchup. But a good thing I have experienced while piloting this is that it can still get you a good punch with an aggro route, for example, and then later on your gameplay in the late game will really get you to have playing this appraiser, getting ahead with the preacher ability of card draws, and of course with Geek's card draw effects are also relevant in those kind of matchup to get you to still have enough gas to make through your opponent's board in card advantage. So I think that's pretty much it, guys. We'll have soon maybe another update of this deck, but pretty much we're still going to have changes after the Outlaws of Thunder Junction is released in the metagame, and we have a lot more of cards to try to sync or add to this kind of deck build. So let's wrap it up for now. Thank you for watching. Do hit like and subscribe, and see you guys in the next video.